I feel like it's naive to say like this is what all authors should do.
Mm.
But I have 3 things that I feel like he's done really well that not just authors, but like anyone who's trying to build anything, like this is how you do it. I feel like the 3 things.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me.
So one is social media.
Okay.
Like he is on social media. Like the biggest thing for anything is having an audience to sell to or like to build.
Which is an interesting concept because I feel like that's usually what the publishers are in charge of, right?
Yeah.
I guess I'm not super familiar with like authors and
I don't know that whole process, but like I mean, I'm sure he sells more books because he's on social media. He's on YouTube.
Absolutely.
People
he has
connect
like 600,000 followers on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people.
Crazy. Well, not only that, but like he shows up on other people's YouTube channels. So he's like a very accessible person. So I've seen him on like multiple other fantasy YouTube channels and podcasts. And even like the YouTube channels you got into a while back was the Nerd of the Rings. Like he just like talks of like if you want to go deep into Middle Earth and that whole world, watch the Nerd of the Rings. It's
amazing.
It's amazing. It's so
fun
good.
If you have some time
but
to go.
He even like showed up on his podcast, or not his podcast, his YouTube channel to talk about Tolkien. And I'm sure like part of it is strategy, yes, but also like it seems like he just enjoys talking about fantasy stuff, you know? It makes it very easy to like him and want
because you know him.
Yeah, because you know him. And he's like one of the nerds, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Instead of like all you know about the author is his name on the front cover and a little portrait picture in the back. It's a little different than that. Yeah. And being able to connect with him on the sense of seeing him interact with these YouTubers, it just builds that trust. And I think that's huge. And same thing with the podcast. So that's one. And just building an audience in general. Because I feel like it's hard to break through the noise anywhere. Like even like podcasting, like I don't even know how many people are going to be listening to this podcast, but like anything is just hard to break through the noise. And I feel like even more so with like writing books. Just think how many books are out there. It's insane.
Yeah, that's true.
There's so many books that like we've never even heard of.
Right.
Or I bet you there's so many that like don't even make the cut to any publishers or like hardly sell any. And they could be some of the best books ever written. But nobody's buying it because nobody knows the person, nobody's heard of them, nobody's like,
right,
you know, and a lot of the publishers,
well, and you can only consume so much. Like I only have 24 hours in a day and I have a job and I have a family and
yep and a lot of the publishers, like again, this is for anything, any industry, but like from the publisher's point of view, writing another Stephen King novel or another Brandon Sanderson novel or another XYZ novel, even if it's Stephen King's worst book,
it's gonna sell
the
better.
fact that it has Stephen King's name on it, the risk level in terms of publishing it and spending the money to publish it and get it in stores drops significantly because they know that it's going to sell.
Interesting.
If a brand new author comes, it could be like a really good book. It could be better than 75% of Stephen King's novels, and the publisher says no thanks because they don't want to risk it. It's like, yes, it could make them a lot of money, but it also could flop. They have no idea because it's a brand new person.
Or even like,
it's just hard to break through the noise.
I don't know much about like the publishing world, but self-publishing is a thing.
Yeah, but even self-publishing, like how...
Right, but if you have like 600,000 people who are willing to subscribe to your YouTube channel, there's a lot. Like if you can't get a publisher to take a book, but you're pretty confident in your book, you could probably get at least like 1,000 people to buy it.
Oh yeah, it's like
right, and then if you really want a publisher to take up your book after that point,
then you can show.
Then you have the proof to say
this sells.
Yeah,
because I mean, Daniel Green, I mentioned him in a previous podcast. Is like he's published a few books and they've done really well. And I guarantee you...
What did Daniel Green write?
I don't know the exact name. He's written like a few smaller books, and then he just started another like Neon Ghosts or something like that. but like he's sold, like they've sold really well and people like him. Okay. And it's like, if he was just a random dude who wrote a book and self-published it, I don't know if it would do very well. But because he has a huge YouTube channel, he talked about it. He is like open with the process of doing it. People like him. They're like, I like Daniel Green. He's hilarious. He's an awesome guy. I watch every one of his videos. He comes out with a book. I'm gonna try it. I may or may not like it, but I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna try it because it's Daniel Green. Yeah. And like Haley Pham is also starting to write a book, and it's like, I guarantee, like, it could be like a very mid, like she said, it's like a romance novel, and it can be a very mid romance novel, and it still would sell well because her whole audience like has followed her journey on reading, and is now following her journey on writing that book, and they like Haley Pham, so they're all gonna try it. It's like, why would I not?
Right. And I guess like the true test is if they'd buy another.
Yeah, right? But like I feel like that's just the biggest hurdle for like a lot of people.
Is to just even have a chance.
Yeah, it gives you a chance. Yeah. Like I don't know. Like again, it's naive for me to tell authors what to do because I'm
not an author.
Not an author, and I've just started reading. But like, I'm just very passionate about like social media followings and stuff. It's like it's so worth it because there's just a lot of opportunity and like growing an audience. And I mean, the second part would be like transparency. Like if you're not yourself on social media, it doesn't even matter in the first place because you're just building a fake audience on a fake identity. But like he was like giving updates on his writing and stuff. That builds trust. Granted, I think like if he didn't do all of these things, he probably would still be successful. But the fact
because he has
it's like exponentially more.
Okay, so number 1 was social media. Number 2 is transparency. What's number 3?
I think the fact that he has openly stated he doesn't have sexual content in his books has helped. Like, I'm not saying that everyone should write clean books because it sells better than having sex in your books, but coming out and saying,
like being on one
specifically
side
picking a side and announcing it, basically being very public on the fact that he's on this side has helped. Like that's a part of like niching down, you know. It's like there's an audience of people who want to read really good fantasy novels who don't want to read about sex. So if they've got a choice of 5 different books, 5 different series, and none of them have ratings, because there's no ratings for books. Like that's another topic for another day, but like there's no ratings on them, so you have no idea. You're probably going to gravitate towards Brandon Sanderson because he is publicly like he's vocal about the fact that like he doesn't see a point in writing sex in his books.
Right.
And so you're like, well, I know these are safe to read and I could really enjoy them and I'm not going to have to deal with that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so I think that so like niching down even more. It's like not just fantasy, not just fiction, but like clean fantasy fiction. That's still for adults, but.
Right. Yeah, no, that's huge because even though it's an adult book, he even has a comment on, I think, the Mistborn series on his website that they were written for adults, but that the content is appropriate for like later teens.
Yeah, like the Lord of the Rings.
Right. Which it's helpful to know some things about what you're about to, dedicate time to. How long does it take to finish an average fantasy book?
Long time.
Right? Like hours of your life. And so
twice the hours for me. I'm a very slow reader.
He picks up a lot of things. Like he remembers a lot of details.
But like you look at the audiobook length, like listening to it at one time speed, and then like add like 10% of the time to that, and that's my reading speed.
Right. But going back to there's only so much time to consume things, and there's so many books to choose from, to be able to say this, I know that this author meets these criteria for books that I'm interested in is huge, and it's hard to find.
Well, not only that, but like, for example, with like Throne of Glass, you're invested
Right.
Because it wasn't in the first book. It was like in like the fourth or fifth book.
Right.
And so you're like 4 or 5 books into the series.
And so I want to know what happened.
And so now like you're so invested in it, you don't want to stop, but at the same time you don't want to deal with that stuff.
Right.
So
and
it's
like
just, but having that guarantee almost of like, okay, I can spend and invest a lot of my emotional and like time investment into this series, and it's gonna be clean.
Right.
So just having that, again, this is a whole like business thing, but like the fear of, well, if I niche down that far I could lose this audience. It's like, well, yeah, but
more people
in that you're hitting are gonna want your stuff because it's so personal to them in terms of what they want. So
right.
And then I guess it's 4 things, but the other thing would be just reducing the friction. Like on his website, he says like
barrier to entry is low.
Yeah, the barrier to entry is like so low because he's helped you navigate what to read for his stuff, and he's very honest. Like at least he seems very honest about his own books. It's like
right. I mean, and remember we've not read his books.
Yeah, no, we haven't. This is all from outsiders.
Yeah, outsiders' perspective. Just like doing some research about what to read next. He seems like a really good author to follow. Seems like.
But yeah, I think what he's done has just been great. Like
just from a consumer's perspective, I wouldn't mind other authors having certain standards that they stick to, that they tell you about. If they have multiple books, where to start, like make the barrier to entry low. Help me learn about you in like the time that I have to learn about you.
And I guess for me, I have more of the perspective of like me doing freelance and trying to build my own business. So I have that kind of perspective of like, wow, this is kind of like what he's done is kind of textbook in terms of like building an audience on social media, having the transparency, being yourself, reducing the friction and barrier to entry, niching down to a very niche audience of people to like reach to. It's just, the more I've looked into him, the more I'm like, he knows what he's doing.
But like on the flip side, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have an author who's trying to get into the space for people to learn about them, the time commitment that Sanderson puts in is enormous. I am sure. And I don't think that you'd necessarily have to reach his volume to even enter the thought process of what he's doing, though.
Yeah.
You know, like just starting on one platform, setting out your values, letting your readers know what to expect from you. Having those things easily accessible, I think, would be huge.
Yeah.
Building a following, I mean, that takes work.
And I'm sure
I think it would be worth it.
It's always weird because I'm sure if he doesn't, he has the money to just like pay someone else to help him film, edit, so that all he does is like show up and talk for the videos, which that's always tough because it's like, well, he can do that because he has the money to spend for, I don't know. It's just a hard balance. It's like that. It's like a double-edged sword, or I forgot what the proper word is. But catch-22. It's like you need money to put out. Well, you don't need.
Money helps you grow.
Money helps you grow and put out a ton more content with less friction, but at the same time, you can't have that money to do that until you've grown.
Right. But I mean, there's definitely an element. I'm not old, but the older I get, the more I'm realizing.
Yeah, you're not even 30.
Yeah, I'm not even 30. I'm almost 30. If I want to do something and it seems like it's going to take a fair amount of effort to do it, my immediate reaction is, can I do this without it taking that much effort? And if I take that road of whatever I'm trying to accomplish, taking less effort, it never turns out as well as if I take a little extra time, put in a little extra effort. I feel like whatever I'm pursuing ends up better. So I'm sure for authors who are trying to put out a book, I'm sure some of them are thinking, I have the book written. Why would I take the time, effort, and energy to like build up an audience? Like I have the product. I think that it would help significantly. I think it would be worth the effort.
Yeah.
My 2 cents, but I'm also not an author, so take it for what it's worth.
He's done really good, and I haven't even read his books. I don't even know if they're good. They could be trash. I'm just joking. They're obviously quality. If he's like, you could do all of this perfectly, and if your product's not good, it's not gonna sell. It doesn't matter. So I'm sure they're really good.